Hey everybody. Um, so just a little update on my raw milk journey. Excuse me, I have not had any in maybe going on 3 weeks. I started having symptoms of what I would call an estrogen overage. I was becoming pretty emotional in ways that just are not normative for me, um, and I found also that my cycle, which is generally very stable, I don't have kind of ups and downs mood wise that throughout my cycles, but I did on the raw milk, and I found two different periods of time were just much more just teary, like less what I would call. I mean, my life is pretty stressful, so and there are a lot of things that any reasonable person would find angering in not just my life, but I'm sure you can think of things in yours. But it was a very different kind of emotionality than I'm used to. Also, what happened, and a little bit of it is still there, but I got kind of a double chin. I got swelling here, and it wasn't like fat, and it wasn't like kind of a standard bloat where kind of all of you would get a little bigger. It wasn't like either of those things, but it's still a bit there. It's still yeah, it's there a little bit, but it was much bigger. I would say it was about 3 times this size. Um, so it is a bummer because what triggered it actually was it was the first time I was making butter out of the raw milk, and you don't just it's not like sort of the quickie butter that you can make just with pasteurized cream or just shaking it in a jar. You put it in the you can do it in a blender, but I did it in a food processor, and it just went and went and went for about 20 minutes, and it separates the buttermilk from what becomes a real gummy, like real thick, what you end up using as the butter. I had never done it like that. I'm sure I've only had pasteurized butter before. Um, I've never had any problem with pasteurized butter, although before I realized how important butter was for building cells, I kind of tried to stay away from it because it just seemed like, a thing I shouldn't eat a lot of, which I now understand is not the case. But um, the when that sulfur compound or that thiol that's in the buttermilk got so taken away from the butter, I think it triggered something not good in me. I know some people are very thiol sensitive, very sulfur sensitive. I am not. I'm a person who does well with sulfur, so it's something with if mustard, if bok choy, if broccoli, if green beans, those kinds of foods make you cringe, then probably you're thiol sensitive. If you're like, oh yum, I like all those things, then probably your body is set up to either need more sulfur or just do well on sulfur. I come from sulfuric people, and I'm not quite as I can't do quite as much sulfur as like my mom can, but it is overall more of a net positive than a net negative for me. And I found that as soon as that buttermilk was all the way out of the butter, there was this really strong reaction that my body had of almost instantly, almost like, I mean, I think it was that night, the first night that I had eaten the butter. Um, Not having that buttermilk in there changed it to such a degree for me, and to the point that like I finally bought butter this week. I broke down and bought some pasteurized butter, which is wow, so expensive now. Um, but I've like inhaled almost a half a pound of butter in like 5 days because I was still needing those building blocks. But for some reason, the pasteurized works better for me. I mean, I'm talking about only Kerrygold. I wouldn't be eating anything except Kerrygold. But I sure wish I could have it from my raw milk supplier because it would be cheaper. Frankly, I could make more of it I could make it for about half the price. of what I'm buying it for. And it's possible that in the future, once my body really calms down and is not having that estrogen response, um, I'll be able to try again and just not beat it that hard. I just won't separate. I won't do that to the level of separation. A lot of people like to, when you're making homemade butter, you really have to squeeze it out, or that's what you're told to do, or else it kind of tastes funky, so to speak. I found that the so-called funky flavor actually just tastes like a nice blue cheese. And so I, going forward, will, if, I mean, I really liked the flavor of the buttermilk that was left over, fermenting just a little bit in there. I didn't put any salt in it. It was just straight. And even though, I mean, I didn't even have anything good to wrap it up in, so it was just sitting in the fridge completely, out in the air. And it was really tasty, and it was probably tastier the second week than it was the first week, because it had that kind of underpinning of, a nice blue cheese. So, but the bad part of the story is that I can't have the raw milk anymore. So I hope that will change. I hope I'll get another chance to do that. I still have some, and I've put little bits in leftover potatoes and salad and made some, potato spinach soup here and there. But I found that also when I cooked it, that estrogen reaction was still there for me. So I did that twice, and then I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that again, because I can make that with almond milk too, just fine. And so I'm going to stay away from that. I'm not having the reaction when I'm eating raw cheese, and but raw cheese that is sold in the store, all the critters are out of it. You can only buy cheese that's raw if it's cheese that's been aged for over 60 days. And so by then, theoretically, the bacterial, kind of the live part is dead by then. And I suspect that that's probably the case, just based on what my body is doing with it. So I am needing a little cheese right now, which is the only animal product that my body is wanting aside from the butter. But I'm pretty sorry to report that I just can't do the raw milk right now. My body really liked, I got up to, a good quart a day or something. And I did absolutely fine with it. Protein wise, it was very bioavailable, good protein for me. I did fine with the fat. I did fine with the digestion of it. There was no problem at all. I would say when people are talking about that they're on all milk diets and they're pooing out white, that's a signal that you're having too much and that your body can't use up all the goodness of it. Just like if you're pooing out corn kernels, or your poo becomes pink because you ate a bunch of beets. That means that the body was not able to extract the nutrients from the beets, or the nutrients from the corn, or in this case, the nutrients from the milk. So that means you need to add something else in there. But anyway, perhaps that will be helpful to somebody. I wanted to log it mostly because in the raw milk groups that I've been in, I haven't seen anyone log any estrogen reaction at all, with the possible exception that someone did ask at one point, oh, I'm having some breast tenderness and some acne, and, and like that's new. And while I didn't have those symptoms myself, I did have overall, I could just tell, as a person who's always had very, very, very balanced gynecological system, that this was different for me, and it was not something that I was interested in continuing at all. And because that system is pretty much the only one in my body that works properly, I sure didn't want to mess it up. So so there you have it, estrogen and raw milk.